Hey guys, all right, so tonight we're going to have us a good little discussion here and see if we can dip into the Word a little bit and get a better understanding of one of the reasons why polygyny is so very important at this day and at this time and at this hour in our current culture and in the world around us, but especially in the restoration of Kol Israel. So here we go. Let's get going. The last few days, I've really had a bunch of different things going on in my head, fireworks exploding, a lot of different stuff, as I've had inputs from a couple different sources confirming something that I've been saying for a long time. Now, for at least 2 years and maybe 3, I'm sure that you can go back in my YouTube videos and you can find places where I have said very clearly, Kol Israel, the house of Israel and the house of Judah, will not be restored without a proper acceptance of and implementation of proper biblical marriage and a proper authority structure. And I know there are a whole lot of people that go, oh yeah, that's what Pete says, right? That's okay. You don't have to believe me. Just watch, okay? But in recent days, I've sort of had a lot of this playing around in my head again, and a conversation the other day began a series of thoughts that then were confirmed in a terrific video that Pastor Dowell had for his Patreons just about 2 days ago, something like that, that deals specifically with, I think the title of it might have been older men marrying younger women, but really the crux of the video, or the gems in the video, were many and hard-hitting from a very broad spectrum, and he was very intentional over and over in saying exactly what I've been saying, and he's been saying it as well, and I don't think either of us got it from the other. It's just something that we've been saying. Israel must deal properly with the authority structure, and one of the things that he said that really struck me, and I guess I've considered it, but it was the first time that it just really hit me right between the eyes, very simply, that what makes us think that we can be men of Israel and restore the nation, but we can't manage our own houses, or we can't bring proper order and authority to our own homes? That really encapsulates a whole lot right there. And there are a whole lot of you males sitting out there who like watching my videos and like hearing me talk about polygyny, but you don't have your house in order. And you want to hear about the restoration of Kol Israel and the second Exodus, and we want to talk about all these different things about God gathering his people, whether it be to the wilderness or directly to the land, or whatever the sequence of events is. And you want to hear all about it, but you don't understand how important it is for you to get your house in order. So we're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Another thing that has really been on the tip of my tongue, the front of my mind, the last 2 or 3 weeks is it stems from a comment that someone in my Patreon said in a discussion about biblical marriage. They made the comment that they view Shabbat and polygyny as being the top two things that they are supposed to be learning and understanding and pursuing. And immediately in my head, fireworks went off. In fact, I sent back our Telegram discussion group, and we've got about 60. I've got about 60 Patreons, so it's still fairly small, but the discussion stays going, and it's pretty lively. And I immediately shot a message back that my head just exploded, because for so long I thought that coming into Torah, coming into understanding Shabbat and understanding feasts and understanding the food commandments, and we're going to have a really good video on food in a day or two. I've got something really cool to share with y'all. free aside there. But in that Patreon discussion, I had put together or mentioned that the Shabbat and food and feasts, to me, are a picture of the first commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Right? Yeshua, Jesus says that the two great commandments, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, are the two great commandments. And when this particular commenter, patron, had mentioned Shabbat and polygyny, it suddenly dawned on me, polygyny is loving your neighbor as yourself, because there's so much sacrifice involved in taking care of additional family members. Now I know some of y'all are like, yeah, loving your neighbor, I get it. No. And we're going to talk about this in more detail here in just a second. But I shared that on a personal Telegram group. See, I've got all these different groups and cogs and discussions going on and things that are happening in the background, and it keeps my brain really running fast. But in that discussion, I had shared my thoughts on the two great commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, as being reflected in the common Shabbat, food, and festival commands. Love God the way he wants to be loved, and your neighbor as yourself. Polygyny. And I commented, I think, in that one, certainly it was on the top of my mind, but all of that right here in one book title answers the second part of that. We want for our sisters what we want for ourselves. Terrific book by Patricia Dixon Spear. And she's looking at it more from a secular standpoint, dips into a little bit of the religious side, but she really interviews women from Muslim communities and Mormon communities and, I think Christian and African tribal communities, that kind of thing. The point being that it's about helping take care of your neighbor. Well, in my comments there, things really jumped into high gear, and one commenter on a Telegram group that I run put in a couple long comments, and I said, "Hey, dude, would you like to be on a live, or on a video discussion with me?" And he was unable to. So I don't want to delay this information, but at some point in the future, I hope to have this gentleman on. I'll reveal more about him at that time. But I have his comments here, and what I want to do is just kind of talk through these comments as we go. And he said, yes, it is a chief expression of the second commandment, in my humble opinion. And if we go to Deuteronomy, chapter 6, verse 5, this is what Yeshua is quoting when he says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might." When he says this in Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 38 or 39. But he then immediately follows that up with, "and your neighbor as yourself," which comes from Leviticus chapter 19. And so I want to go to Leviticus chapter 19 for just a second, and let's take a look at this. If we go to Leviticus chapter 19 and take a look at verse 18, scroll down here, it says, "You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the sons of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yahweh." And I think it's easy looking at the whole verse in context and go, oh, I see. Okay, this just deals with not bearing grudges against your people. But what does loving your neighbor as yourself really mean? If you read the wider context in this chapter, you'll recognize to start with that your neighbor isn't just the person next door. And this was a comment that Yeshua made in the parable of the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? Right? And he goes on to demonstrate that the guy way out there that is the half-breed that loves God but is keeping the commandments but might not be just like you or look just like you or understand everything just like you, that's your neighbor. Right? So the conversation proceeded, and he said that pure and undefiled religion is this, reminding us of James chapter 1, verse 27, right? And some of you are familiar with the rest of that verse, but I want to take you to it so that you can see it firsthand. James chapter 1, verse 27, pure and undefiled religion in the sight of Elohim and Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their distress, and keep oneself unstained by the world. And again, I know some of y'all are saying, oh, no, if you just pat them on the head and you give them a $20 bill, you're good. You've met that. You've done pure and undefiled religion, right? Well, it's a whole lot more complicated than that, as we will see in just a second. But what we have to understand is that people talk about human rights. We think that, people have human rights, right? We assume God gave rights, right? And the fact is, God did give rights, and he finds that rights are very important. So a couple that we can think about, he told us to be fruitful and multiply. And that's one way that we help fulfill the rights of our tribe. Israel has tribes, and the tribes are, in order to keep your tribe going strong and to have men ready for war. You go back to the sons of Issachar, did a video about them a while back. That is all about being fruitful and multiplying. And we see how the sons of Issachar chose to do that. It tells us directly in the Scripture. They had many wives and they had many sons. That's how they had many sons for war. But that's not really what we want to dwell on yet, is it? I know, because that's so uncomfortable. Other rights. We think about the stranger and the poor that have rights to the corner of your field. Interestingly, that also appears in Leviticus chapter 9 or 19. We just talked about loving neighbor as yourself. Let's go back to verse number 9. Now, when you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very corners of your field, nor shall you gather the gleanings, or those things that fall off of your harvest, right? Shall not gather the gleanings of your harvest. So there are parts of your field that don't belong to you, and the reason is so that others, the needy and the stranger, can come and gather, right? Look at this, the next verse. You shall not, nor shall you glean your vineyard, nor shall you gather the fallen fruit of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the needy and for the stranger. I am Yahweh your Elohim, right? Other rights to consider. The land has rights. The land has a Shemita 7th year rest. It's a right that the land has, and if we don't fulfill the right that the land has, then judgment falls on us. We see where not keeping the Shemita got Israel in hot water, in deep water, and was part of the reason why they were sent to Babylon for a period of time, right? Or the southern kingdom was. Also, your animals have a right to rest on Shabbat. Your animals aren't supposed to work. You're supposed to turn them out and let them graze and what have you. The commandment is very specific. They have rights. Animals have rights. So the question is, do the widow and the orphan in our midst have God-given rights as well? And this is where things start getting a little bit sticky, right? So let's have us a little bit of a conversation about this, because the widow and the orphan do have rights. And it's not as simple as throwing a $20 bill at them and patting them on the head. They have a place in Israel. They have a place in the land. I would like to begin by reminding you of Ruth chapter 3, okay? And actually, we're familiar with the whole story, but let's look a little bit here at Ruth chapter 3. It's gonna lay some foundation, and then we're gonna look at some more pieces here as we put this together, and it should challenge us. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? Now is not Boaz our kinsman, with whose maids you were? Behold, he winnows barley at the threshing floor tonight. Wash yourself, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor, but do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. It shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will tell you what to do. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. The commenter had said, I believe that a righteous widow or abandoned woman has the right in Torah to seek covering in a Torah man's house in the same manner the poor has the right to harvest the corner of the field. Do you understand that? The widow, the single woman, the abandoned woman have the right to seek covering from a Torah man in the same way that they have a right to go to the corners of that field and glean harvest from that man's field. So in this view, one could argue that to deny that right when sought would be a great unrighteousness. It is unrighteous to say, no, you can't have the corners of the field. That's mine. God says that they belong to, the corners of the field belong to the needy and to the stranger. The widow, the orphan. Is it convenient? No, it's not convenient. It's not always convenient to let the animals rest on Shabbat either, is it? Right? It's not always convenient to let the corners of the field and the gleanings be left to the stranger and the poor. You see, here's the deal. We are stewards of his resources. We're responsible. What he gives us, we're responsible to then use. We've been charged with managing his dispensation of those resources to ourselves, our families, and everyone else he has allotted them to. What do you think about that? So, men of Israel, you have a responsibility. And I hope this is making you uncomfortable. The thing is we cannot hold back the corner of our field from the poor because it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to him, and he assigned it to them. We're only stewards. Thus, if he has given us the resource to care for a woman who has no covering, let's say she's a Torah woman and she's seeking covering, I would argue that it perfectly fits with loving thy neighbor as thyself. Giving her the best of what you have to take care of her in the same way you would take care of yourself or your own house. Tough stuff here. This is hard stuff. This is challenging stuff. See, a lot of people go, oh, no, that's for a different time. That's not for our time. I see it in Scripture, but it doesn't really apply to us today. Or does it? That's a good question. Another thought on the similarity of concepts between the corners of the field and the needy. What if your woman doesn't want to share her husband? This is my field. It's interesting to me that Boaz shared the corners of his field with Ruth, and then when she sought covering at night, he covered her with the corners of his prayer shawl. How about that? Right? He covered her with the corners of his field, and then covered her with the corners of his prayer shawl. Now, some of y'all are going, wait, you're stretching the meaning there, right? But isn't that what Yeshua says? How often I wanted to gather you as chicks underneath my wings? And the wings that he speaks of are his kanaf. Go to Malachi chapter 4, and it talks about placing them under the shelter of his wings, or healing in his wings. Psalm 91, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Right? There it is. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yahweh, my refuge and my fortress, my Elohim, in whom I trust. For it is he who delivers you from the snare of the trapper and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and a bulwark. This is what the widow and the orphan need, right? They need to be covered by the wings of a righteous man, right? It's where they find safety, the shield, the bulwark, right? All of these things, just as the Messiah does this for his people, it is a man's responsibility to do this for his family, for his house, for his wife or wives. Let's continue here. It's interesting to me to note that Boaz shared the corners of his field, okay? Or are the corners of a man's talit as the corners of his field? To give provision and covering to those righteous in the land who have none? Yeah, you might say, well, that's just a coincidence. There's nothing significant here at all. But I don't think anything in Scripture is a coincidence. And here Boaz has the corners of his field and then the corners of his robe. Or his, you could say, prayer shawl or talit, some would understand. So I think there's a correlation. How often does Yeshua want to gather us? When we're willing, we come running, and he immediately just covers over. Here's the question. Does your woman have the right to the corners of your talit any more than the corners of your field? Can she say, oh, no, nobody's allowed over there. That's mine. No. Does she understand that? Do you understand that? See, in the video the other day that I saw with Pastor Dowell, one of the things that was really fantastic about it is he was talking about how important it is for he was talking about how important it is for the field he was talking about how important it is for the men of Israel to step up and do what they're supposed to, but also a fantastic video wherein he talks about how the women should be welcoming and seeking and looking out for their sisters, taking care of, preparing for them. That's what righteousness does. That's what righteousness does. So how else will Israel be restored? Everybody thinks, oh, the restoration is going to happen out there. No, it's got to happen here, and then it has to happen in this house, in your house, in each house, building and growing and multiplying. Tough stuff. I just realized looking over here that I'm not sure I ever switched over to the scriptures. So you didn't see any of the scriptures. You heard the references. You saw me, and I read as we went. My apologies for that. Go back and look them up yourself. You know where they are. I challenge you. I encourage you. Okay? So, to whom does the corners of your field belong? Who should you allow? And ladies, this is something for you. You have the right. If you are a godly lady, you have the right, just as Ruth, to go seeking covering. You have the right to ask for that. You have the right to look around, just as Naomi did, and say, where's the righteous man that is capable of and ready to take care of me and add me in his family? It looks to me like Boaz was well along in age, and apparently I think he even told Ruth, might be a good idea if there's somebody else that would be a closer kin, might be a better somebody. And the father closed that door. And so Boaz said, okay, I got this. I will step up and take care of this. And that's the lineage of our Messiah. How significant is that? It's very significant because it's what men in Israel do. Righteous men. And ladies, you have a right to the corners of the field. You do. I pray Yah's blessing on you. For King and Kingdom, I bid you shalom.